Welcome to Not Just a Recruiter, the podcast that goes beyond LinkedIn to discover how recruitment agency leaders build, survive, and thrive. Today's guest is TJ, the founder of BlockMB. He spent the last decade recruiting IT infrastructure and security professionals across Europe, and now he leads a deliberately different remote-first agency. His vision centers on how consultants have true ownership, the freedom to work how they want, and even the chance to become partners in the business. Hi, TJ. It's lovely to speak with you again.
Hello, how are you doing?
Really good, thank you. We'll get straight into it. One of the biggest things that stood out to me from speaking with you is how different BlockMB is intentionally differentiating themselves from the typical agencies. How is BlockMB different to the typical recruitment agency?
I think the thing that makes a difference or makes it be different in its foundation is that I didn't actually wanted to set up a recruitment agency because I always thought and saw the leader had to be at the very front for it to be run in a way where everyone would follow that person, believe in them, and work hard because they wanted to work in an environment where the leader was the hardest working person in the room. I thought if I wanted to invest into a business and not have to actually be present every day and work harder than everyone else to have the respect and have the rest of the team follow me, I could have just invested in a corner shop, stocked it, paid some minimum wage to sit in the corner shop. And, of course I'm not saying running a corner shop is easy, but at that point, I don't have to be there for the corner shop to make money. So when I set up BlockMB, it was more from the point of, I want to set up an agency where I'm happy to work, where the foundations are set up that I, as a recruiter, can be in the business, doing my own thing, and other recruiters or other people in the business aren't affected by me in the way of me having to be present for others to be at their best.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to rely on others making money so that I make money. So I pay myself commission. I still want to do recruitment. I still want to be working as a recruiter whilst others have their own market, have their own specialization, and the technical field that you're working in has to be owned by you. Well, I think even at the top sort of recruitment agencies that have 50, 60 sort of people working from them, they aren't even cracking more than 1% of their market. So if you can have 25 people all working their individual markets in their individual way and allow for that individuality, allow for that flexibility, but not have them all depend on each other, you almost have like a fireproof door in between or fireproof wall in between all of the consultants, because one running into a problem with the current market doesn't affect the rest. If you've got, and I've spoken to so many people over the last 2 years and even before who hired and hired and hired in the good times, and for 50 to 12 people because they hired super aggressively when the market was there. Now the market is gone and there's nothing to be done for that headcount. Effectively, it's a recruitment agency that is based around individuality, focuses on having a very fair treatment for consultants and therefore allowing them to work in the way that they best work and feel comfortable exploring what that means to them. Of course, that does mean that you have to be there for people and listen to them, and it's I thought it's going to be easier than what it's turned out to be, but at the end of the day, it's given me the enjoyment of having something that I actually feel very passionate about. I've not asked people to work any hours. Like, people don't have specific hours. Most people work more than 40 hours by a mile, and not because they feel like I don't think any of them have ever looked at how many hours in a week they're working, but they go to their gym classes at 9 and maybe see a friend for coffee at 11, do a specific training for something here or there, or and that is, again, some people are more leaning into that than others. And some, you write them an email at 6 o'clock in the morning or at 9 o'clock in the evening and they will always answer. But at 10 o'clock, they'll be gone for 2 hours because they're seeing a friend or they're doing CrossFit or something. And it's moving away from that traditional hardcore sort of recruitment agency into that next generation of more mature. And I think that's essentially what it comes down to. You have to have a workforce that is more mature, that ideally has gone through the process of the sort of boiler room style training and therefore understands how great it is to have that sort of flexibility. Because I think if you don't know the other side of the coin, it's very difficult to appreciate flexibility.
How do you think that this approach has helped you as a business, like financially, and also just in terms of your growth and being able to win business and maintain business? How has that approach and setting up your agency helped you within that?
I think there was definitely two obvious ones. We've got extremely low costs. We're very lean. We don't have any back office staff or a office cost. So there is very little general cost involved apart from the staff. And, and we pay very good commission at 25 and 50%. So anything above 50K in a quarter, we pay 50%. The first 360 deals, 50%. That does mean that a few of the people who I've spoken to, they would have made double, if not triple the money they were making with their current company, doing exactly the same and doing it all from wherever they want to. So one of our guys at the moment is in Portugal. The other one is in Vienna. One is somewhere up north. I'm currently in London and, I've been in Germany for the last few weeks. So realistically, especially with where we are now with so many clients also working from home, there's no point of me being anywhere. And because there is no junior staff that really benefits from hearing me on the phone all day, it doesn't make any sense for me to be in an office.
On the flip side of that, what are some of you mentioned that it's not been as easy as you thought it would be. What
Mhm.
have been some of the challenges that you faced running a business in the way that you do?
I mean, the current market, I think, is a challenge for almost everyone. And, we've had more of a fair share of unaccepted offers, of, the normal sort of recruitment emotional train that just takes you in all directions. And I think that is something that therefore, like normally you can just grab someone, go for a pint in the pub and have a chat. Normally, that could just be the end of that. But if someone is sat by themselves at home, you really need to make an effort to make sure that that person isn't wallowing in their own sorrow. Some people will have a very constant baseline of emotional stability, and some just need a little TLC every now and so. But I think the big learn is like having a constant, very open channel of communication makes you see when people need a little hand holding, or we've got far more internal communication than I ever had working in an office. I think because we aren't in an office, there is the sort of moment of let's pick up the phone and have a quick chat, and then it changes that dynamic.
When you think of kind of, I guess, the traditional agency that me and you probably think of is it's probably got a lot of like junior staff. They want people in the office every day. It's very KPI driven, and you need to be doing this amount of calls. You need to be sending this amount of emails, that kind of like environment. What are the specific like pain points and limitations you experienced that made you see the gap in the market for something like BlockMB?
That's a good question. I think to come back to the very first point where I thought if I do this and I will do it my way, that I will feel I'm 100% behind, because then I'll do it with authenticity. I will do it with gusto. I will do it with passion. And then it's just going to work because I believe in it.
Mm-hmm.
This is what feels most comfortable to me. Therefore, I'm going to be 100% invested into it. And I'm going to surround myself with the people that have a similar sort of outlook on this and that have a similar belief system and therefore will make this work. And I still don't know if there's really a gap in the market. I think there was 26,000 or 25,000
Recruitment
recruitment.
agencies.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you're just another one of those. But that always make me think, in the end of the day, it's just recruitment. It's just, you need to be in enough places, enough times to be lucky enough to make a connection with someone that you can then help them find the right people for their current situations. And I think that's exactly where I then feeds into, where you still have to bet on the horse to be involved in the race to potentially get a deal. But if you get into the situation of, I'm just going to let something else decide what horse to bet on, and there was more information that I was speaking to someone about AI and betting, and that they actually just use AI to tell them what to bet on, and that their betting results have gone through the roof because of that. And I think it just gives you then the final bit of information, but it doesn't help you go through the stages of what didn't you choose, why didn't you choose all of this, and all that information therefore is kept from you. But sometimes that's really useful because you don't want to know all that information, because you make the bet and you move on. In recruitment, I think you now have this brilliant situations where a lot of processes can be streamlined, a lot of time can be saved through AI, and you can spend more time speaking to clients, speaking to candidates. But it really has brought out this very clear distinction that if a person understands that they've just been texted by a programmed AI, their response rates are super low. So you almost want to make a mistake in a text to make it seem like, this has been written by a person, or in an ideal way, well, actually write it, because you will stand out so much if it's a text that clearly hasn't been written by AI, that you will get a response. And that
Mhm.
is something that we're seeing more and more, that the more we use AI to help us get the information, but then write the text ourselves, the better the results are. And we're currently working with Hoxo Media on quite a lot of things. And, Sean has got so many ideas that I think have got very good potential to be implemented almost in any agency, but especially in an agency that is very lean, looking at all of these different aspects to make us potentially even leaner. And, that obviously that's all AI in marketing, but AI in filling your calendar with interviews and stuff is insane. And I actually had this thought, I don't know, you might enjoy this. I had this thought like 1:50, or I think it was like 2:30 or something in the morning. And in my head, I was thinking about, when we'll have this conversation, what we'll speak about. I was feeding one of the boys, and I was just thinking about, what do I think of AI? Does it scare me? What does AI make me feel?
Mhm.
For some reason, the first thought was that it must feel like the people when the industrial age revolutionized the cloth making industry, where the people who were actually making the cloth were worried about their jobs. The looms were getting automated, and all that workforce was potentially no longer needed. But the
Mhm.
people who were thinking holistically above it saw the potential and can actually monetize on a very different level now, because costs can be cut down. Something that previously would have taken 4 people now takes a subscription of £50 a month. All of a sudden, you can service. I had this crazy thought that, if I only have to spend 2 minutes to fill a job, but I only charge £500 for it, but therefore I can place 6 people in a day or 10 people in a day, but it's such low time involvement. Is that a possibility? Because the candidates would surely win from, not having such a big price tag attached to them when they're sent from a recruiter. A company would benefit from it because they wouldn't have to pay that much money. I'll benefit from it because I can all of a sudden increase my quantity to an extreme level. But if quality is the cost, then I think at the moment we're not quite at that level, right? But again, with the cloth industry, I think beforehand it would have been insanely expensive to have a personalized piece of clothing. But through that industrialization and the process of automation, it becomes cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, until it's so cheap that you can service everyone.
There's an element of AI where it's so robotic, and probably the most common challenge is that it's so robotic and so generated that it's automatically just palmed off and not responded to. And you've mentioned about working with Hoxo, probably on social media and that kind of side. You have also mentioned before you've already kind of experimented with different technologies as well within the business. What are some of the key parts within recruitment that you see are where the human element is critical and AI is not there? And on the flip side of that, what do you kind of see as like the easiest things right now that AI could probably take off of your plate?
I think the actual speaking to a candidate and the actual speaking to a client allows you for a level of control that I can't quite see being achieved without that actual conversation. And the understanding of a pain point, I think you can't really quantify that, right? You can say like, yeah, of course, this person has X amount of reason to leave percentage wise. And so we need to find them something that is Y amount, a pull factor to the new company. And those two factors together need to be 100% for that person to move. But when you then speak to them, you need to requalify that and you need to gain the flexibility and you need to understand the person. I think that process instills a level of trust and understanding from that person into you that you can't, in my current view, you just can't get through simple if then what not sort of coding.
Interestingly, I've actually spoken with somebody whose company, they're like a portfolio of companies, and they are building an AI agent that screens candidates. It's a video call or a phone call. And to me, that is just, it is crazy because, like you said, there's so many nuances when you speak with someone, their tone of voice, how they avoid a certain question, how they're really passionate about like a certain subject with clients and with both candidates. That physically just cannot be communicated over a transcript or an AI summary. And I think being a recruiter, yes, you are, whether you can place a role, 6 roles in one day, you can place 6 roles in 1 month. Having that like trust level and really deeply knowing to an extent, the candidate and the client, again, that's just something that can't be quite understood, can't be quite
Mm.
quantified.
So what
If
was that? So
that
they have got a AI that just actually fully speaks back and forth to a candidate.
rather than the recruiter having to pick up the phone, the candidate has that first call, that first interaction, yeah, with an AI, which is crazy. I think even from my perspective, and me being, in this role, also being, at some stages, I've been the candidate, I've been the person going through the recruitment stages, and again, even knowing what I know now, I think I would have a massive hesitation. I think to that kind of process, because my core belief is that AI is not to replace a human, it's to enable them, to give them more time back, to be able for them to focus on the things that are important to them, whatever that is, rather than them just feed everything to an AI, sit back and do nothing. So it's a really, really essential aspect, I think, for any recruitment, anybody in recruitment, anybody in any business, is to understand the core parts that a human touch is critical, and the parts where they're just doing AI for AI's sake.
This is a interesting aspect to it then, right? So I think someone telling you they know how you feel, or when you're like, I'm a bit nervous about handing my notice in tomorrow. And the recruiter goes, oh yeah, no worries. They might counter offer you. And that's because the manager has told them to speak to them about the counter offer. But I think until you've handed in your own notice, been presented with a counter offer, had a emotional conversation to that person, and it's very difficult for even a human to put themselves into the shoes of another human having those feelings. And I think once you've done that and once you've been out of a job and you felt the stress of trying to find a job or out of uni, and you're looking for your first job and everything just feels so overwhelming, and then you speak to someone like that and someone says that, and you can say, I've been there, I understand, you will treat them with a different approach. And I think that I just don't think you can train AI to have gone through feelings to connect with a human on an emotional level.
For sure. What are some of the areas that you've already kind of explored with AI within the business and you haven't quite yet found the right solution or the right strategy?
Really anything from candidate approach, clients approach, social media. I mean, the thing that I actually think is the craziest is the translational ability of AI. Working between German and English speaking markets. At the beginning, when I started in recruitment, luckily we had an intern who spoke German, but because of my linguistic ability in German, we thought we'd better hire someone who just checks all of my written work before it gets sent out. The intern then did that, and it didn't take long for me because I was educated in England. So I just never had that high level professional grammar and everything that I needed to have for the clients. That's 9 years ago. So from 9 years ago, I would have hired someone to check my outgoing emails to now, if I hired someone who's on a B1 or B2 level, I'll comfortably say they can write texts in German with AI to a C2 level quality. So I think the translational ability of AI is brilliant. And I think that is where the biggest use of it comes at the moment for us. I think for where I'd love to see more of it is just pure sourcing, as in find me the 5 best fitting candidates for this role from LinkedIn, and you just get the 5 best fitting candidates. That'd save me hours. That'd be brilliant, right? Of course, that then means at that point,
No more LinkedIn recruiter.
say again?
I said no more LinkedIn recruiter.
No, I think at some point they could either just go, right, you can all go now. Later, you guys aren't needed anymore. We will take it from here. But obviously that the recruiters are one of the main revenue streams.
Stepping out of AI for a minute, what do you feel are the biggest challenges that, as not just an agency yourself, but typically as a market, you face when attracting talent, when securing clients? What are the biggest challenges or the most disruptive things that you are experiencing at the minute?
I think just the general global economical situation makes it very tough to convince companies to part with their money. And a lot of companies now don't need to hire urgently and just are happy to wait what will come to their job ads. And at the moment, good people are applying directly to a lot of the companies who beforehand wouldn't have even received a single CV. And some of the places I've worked with for years, they're like, I'm sorry, we just, don't need to even buy a Stepstone advert. We just put it on our website. That's enough because there is enough high quality crawlers for, if you look at 3 job ads on LinkedIn, all of a sudden, you will see other advertisements directly from companies' websites. Advertisement in that sense has come a long way, and people will just see job ads so much easy.
One of the biggest challenges any business has, B2B, is your biggest competitor is the status quo. And a lot of companies now, they have to let go of people leave. And rather than the urgency of replacing that person and the time and the cost of investment that comes with recruiting that person, they would rather and have more comfortable sticking with the status quo of that workload is then dished out to people within the remaining business. Those market forces that are felt across the industry are completely out of your control. What are you doing as not just a recruiter within BlockMB, but as the leader? What are you doing to position your business and your consultants to?
I've actually had a very on-topic conversation about this just before this call, and I think the main thing is just go with the flow of time and just be flexible. Don't try to hold on to this old school mentality of this is my market, this is my location. If hiring in Miami currently is just not that great, But, Singapore is kicking off. Having the flexibility to take that wave, and when that wave disappears, just look for the next one, I think is such a massive advantage in comparison to the very stagnant, this is the little market that you're allowed to make it work.
Personally, from my observation, is you have mentioned that your workforce is typically a little bit more senior and more older, is they have the experience and they have that flexibility to be able to not pick up and go, but to pivot like that because they have a foundation of knowledge that whatever market they're in, they can, it's not a copy and paste, but they have a foundation of knowledge that they can apply to a new market, to a developed market. And that probably is a strength, the strength that you have.
Yeah. One of the main things I hire for is, does someone have a belief in the market they want to work? So if someone comes to me and just says, like, I'll work any market, great. But if someone comes to me and says, this is the market I want to work, these are the reasons why I think, this market is going to be good. And then they go at it and they figure out it wasn't, but just ever slightly adjust the location and it is. Or just pivot onto a slightly different tech and it is. So to be very confusing, I think the person who is happy to work any market, I'm always a bit wary of, but the person who believes that they can make any market work, that's the sort of person that I think will do well because it's, as you said, their skill set applied to a specific market and
Mm.
they will just find a hot market.
It's a bit like an entrepreneur that's built their business up to millions. And they said, if I lost everything tomorrow, I would go back and do it again because I've built a set of skills that I can apply to any business. What would you say for a recruiter that's looking to go out by themselves or someone that has kind of just started and they are struggling with positioning themselves, they're potentially struggling with finding the right staff if they're at that stage? What would be some of your best advice for them?
Use rec to recs, like find a good rec to rec and use them because you are a recruiter, buddy. Like if you don't believe that recruitment works, then you're in the wrong industry. Find a good rec to rec, stick with them and make them understand you. Literally everything we've just spoken about packed into one, make them understand your pain points, make them walk the walk with you. And yes, it's going to be a chunky bill, but yeah. So I think just trust a good rec to rec.
That is really interesting and it's so obvious. And I'm sure it's quite ironic, but I'm sure there's so many agencies where they're hiring for their own consultants and they're like, oh, we don't want to use a recruitment agency.
Yeah. I've had that conversation with managers in the past where I'm like, did you say that doesn't work? So you think our business model doesn't work? That's one of my favorite things to say to. So I work a lot in the IT service provider industry. And one of the normal sort of walls that are hit is they say, look, we don't want to use a recruitment agency. We want to do this in-house. And then you speak to them and, they try to sell themselves as we're a specialist IT security, IT service provider who has these technological partners. And you go, right, you are the specialist. That's what you sell to your clients. That's what I'm saying to you. If you want me to do this specific thing, the specific service, let me do it. You focus on what you're good at and you don't have to bring anything in-house. You don't have to do any of that. So yeah, I've had that thought so many times and I bet a lot of people have said that and never realized it.
Yeah, of course. I probably not back then, but now if I was on a not back when I was like 21 and young and in recruitment, but probably now I would have that conversation with a client and just in my head think, checkmate.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's, yeah. I love like when they say that.
It's been amazing speaking with you. Thank you so much. Where can anybody find you online?
I think LinkedIn is probably your best bet.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you very much for your time.